this morning is Joshua Atkinson. Joshua began his fellowship journey in 1977 and over the years served in many different roles. He is an inner light consciousness guide and has led the Carmel Experience, a week-long program of personal transformation. He is an ordained fellowship minister and for the past 35 years has worked as a professional counselor. Joshua has been a student of A Course in Miracles since 1977. Joshua says when he has to talk, he spends a couple of weeks meditating every day and he gets some inspiration, but when he comes up here, he never quite knows what he's going to say, and he gets surprised too. So we're in for a really wonderful surprise and a wonderful talk from Joshua. His topic is Just Say Yes to Love, Nuggets from A Course in Miracles.
Did I tell you that?
Yes.
I did. Okay. I had to laugh last night because I've had a little bit of a head cold, a little bit of fuzziness in my head, and I was going to do something different this year. As Sharon said, my preparation for a gathering like this, or just about any time I speak, is to do what I call a reverie. And I do a series of those prior to speaking and actually have the experience of sharing just as we're sharing now. And I learn a great deal out of that. And as I do, as we're in a live state right now. But what's interesting to me about all of that is sometimes it's eye-opening and I don't know where it's going to go. And I'm just basically an observer in a sense. But with this little head cold, I thought, I'm going to make some notes just so I don't get lost. And that's different from me. So last night I was looking at my crypt notes and I was doing a little editing and I must have hit a wrong button because I deleted everything. So here we are. One of the things that I became acutely aware of and am acutely aware of is the influence that Paul Solomon's had on all of us here. For those of you that are somewhat new to the fellowship since Paul's passing, I'm sure that his teachings have still touched you. And part of the reason I say that is that one of the things that Paul taught us is that the consciousness of the truth in a teaching never dies. So that even though the body is not here, even though the book was written 100 years ago, it doesn't really matter because the consciousness of truth is forever present. And so I recognized Paul's presence because of his teaching and the love which he taught. One of his favorite phrases that stuck in my mind is, I need no excuse for experiencing and expressing pure joy. Now, can you imagine Paul standing up here saying that? He would do it with a little more animation than what I just did. He would probably get all scrunched up and he'd probably have a grin on his face and then he would beam it. And that still exists. That's one of the reasons that we're drawn to the fellowship, I believe, is because it is a place of joy, an expression of joy, not trapped in doctrine, not stuck in beliefs, but in a present experience. And that present experience has a curiosity to me also, because being truth, it is also timeless. So those that are looking in on Zoom now, and it would be looking in at a future time, it's all still present if we choose to see it that way. And what's most important about that to me is that truth doesn't require words. So the words that you hear me saying today are somewhat irrelevant to the experience of truth. There's an undercurrent that flows here, that flows within you and flows within me. There's an undercurrent of love just waiting to be expressed. And that undercurrent of love is regardless of the form, regardless of the words. And it can show up as simply as a smile to another. It can show up as handing a bit of friendly advice to a friend in need, or to a $5 bill to the guy on the street corner, or to going to the supermarket with a plan, or to Walmart with a plan to make someone smile. And that's that expression of joy and love that I think is most important of anything. So the topic today, say yes to love. Well, what's the alternative? Say no to love? Then what's that gonna be like? And the second part of the topic was golden nuggets from A Course in Miracles. I'm not going to quote chapter and verse from the Course. I'm not here to sell that book. It has definitely been a path that many of us have been on. Let me ask this though first. Is there anyone, just a little show of hands, anyone totally unfamiliar with A Course in Miracles? Never heard of it? Everybody's heard of it. Good. So how did the Course come to be? Why A Course in Miracles? There was a couple of folks many years ago who worked in a fairly intense atmosphere, Helen Schucman and Bill Thetford. They're the founding people in the formation of this book. And what they were experiencing, I think, is an experience that we can all borrow from. What they were experiencing, what Bill Thetford said to Helen, was in the chaos and the turmoil and the politics and in the conflicts of the organization that they were working in. They were professors of psychology at a university in New York. There was so much conflict and so much upset that Bill Thetford had just had it. He just said, I've had it. And his comment to Helen was, there's got to be a better way. It's sort of like the bumper cars at the amusement park. You know, have you ever been on the bumper cars? And bam and bam and bam, and, you know, and he was tired of that, as we have all grown tired at times of conflict and turmoil. So Helen looked at him and she recognized that, maybe there is a better way. Now, neither one knew what that better way might be, but it was shortly after that, basically in response to that desire for a better way, that a voice began speaking to Helen in remedy to that specific situation and that set of circumstances they were in. And they found that very helpful. They also found that very startling. Helen, not being one that would consider herself religious or psychic, all of a sudden is hearing this message, and its effectiveness is playing out so that their life is becoming better. So that progressed for a period of time. And then one day, this voice, which was the voice of Jesus, said to her, "This is A Course in Miracles. Take notes." And she responded to that by saying yes, not knowing what it is, perhaps doubting it. I don't really know what her view of that was, but she did what she was asked to do. And then later on, she asked Jesus, says, "Well, why me? You know, why'd you pick me?" And he said, "Well, I knew you'd do it." And so 1,100 pages later, and she did it in shorthand, 1,100 pages later in Bill Thetford's translation of her dictations, and then in later editing by Kenneth Wapnick, we're left with what we have today. And actually, there's 3 or 4 versions out there. And it's a heavy lift. That's why I think that I can probably share this part of my experience that some of you may have had. When I started studying the Course in 1977, through the grace of Judy Skutch and Gerald Jampolsky's, Paul brought them into a family gathering, a July experience in 1977. Paul, having recognized the value of the Course and participating to some extent in helping bring it to being. I don't know to what extent. I'm told that he helped with some of the financing of the first publication. I know that much is true, but I don't know the details. So he recognized the value. And as many of you know, Paul was the avid student as much as a teacher. And being the avid student, he wanted to share what he was learning. And so he brought the course in, brought Gerald and Judy to do their presentation. And out of that, I joined my first Course in Miracles group at that same time. It was the staff of the fellowship would meet every day at lunch and have a course reading and have some conversation. And the course didn't make a damn bit of sense to me. It was so difficult to grasp, because I know what I was trying to do, and I think most of us were trying to do when we first picked up the book, was we were trying to understand it. And understanding has its limitations, because understanding is based on what we think we already know. So there's a tendency for course students to try to understand it. The course asks us in the beginning, actually it tells us in the beginning, don't believe this. It says that pure and simple. So don't believe it. The last thing that we need is another set of beliefs. And it goes on to say, what I would suggest you do is just practice it and look for the results. The proof's in the pudding. It doesn't say that, but that's the essence of it. So since 1977, Analia and I both have been involved in course groups of one sort or another, led course groups, and so on, and have found benefit. And some of the benefits I'd like to illustrate. I'm going to hit a broad stroke on some of the principles of the course without specifying chapter and verse. That I can't remember all of them. So in about 5 years or so after having started the course, I found myself choosing to get involved in a lot of other things, like work, raising a family, paying attention to what more was going on in this world than what the course was leading me to in its instructions. And so what happened is, for me, was I let the dust settle on the course book. There was a little 1-inch pile of dust on top of the book for a short while, though the reality is that the course was still resonating somewhere within me, but I wasn't actively studying the Course in Miracles. That didn't last too long. We found ourselves in a place in Asheville, North Carolina, where that could begin to resonate again, and I could pay more attention to it. And it came back alive for me. So I started to grasp it. And then the most interesting thing in my path of using the course was about 13 years ago. Having been still a student of the course and still considered myself benefiting greatly from it, there was a watershed moment when our daughter, Mary, decided that it was time for her to leave this world. And in the course of that process, she was 23 years old. She was a special needs child, had many handicaps. And Aaliyah and I had been like this with her for many years. So it was a challenge. It was a real challenge to say goodbye to her. But prior to her leaving, I was sitting at the foot of her bed in the hospital, and middle of the night, and had a vision or hallucination or a dream, but there was substance to it. Call it whatever you want. And in this vision, I would prefer to call it, I saw this young lady, Mary, our daughter, walking towards me from what seemed like a distance. But what was different was that she was walking with a perfect gait, which was very contrary to her experience in this world. She was erect. She was confident. She was light-filled. She was happy. And I thought, wow, what a vision. And I loved it. And I could just soak that up. I can soak it up this moment. And as she drew closer and closer, I noticed that she had something in her hands, and she was carrying it in this fashion. And as she got closer and closer, I noticed that that was the case, and I looked, and as she got very close, she held her hands out to me, and what she held out was the Course in Miracles books. And I thought, oh my, what is this? What is this? What a gift. I don't even know what the gift is, but there it is. And so when she did pass, you can imagine I might have been a little more motivated to give more serious attention to A Course in Miracles after having that experience. There was something there for me. So I dove into it, and I've been diving into it ever since then. It's our first action. No, our first action of the day is have a cup of coffee. It's our second action of the day is to review our course lessons and have some conversation about that. But as an addendum to that, the say yes to love part and its relationship to the Course, Paul Solomon, when our daughter was first born, she had multiple handicaps and had heart surgery open heart surgery at age 2, first of 3. But anyway, we took her to Paul as a baby for the christening. But prior to that, he wanted to meet with us and talk. So we handed this baby to Paul, this little Mary. And this was at Hearthfire up in the Shenandoah Valley. And he held her in his arms and just coddled her and cuddled her. And there was, it was just a beautiful, beautiful scene. He was loving her. And I suspect she was loving him. But after a short few minutes, he looked up at both of us and he said to us, he said, "You have a master teacher here." And from that moment on, we could see her as more than just a daughter, just our offspring, just someone that it was there for us to care for, but also someone that was there for us to learn from. And boy, was she a teacher. Oh God, what a teacher. So let me sidetrack for 1 second on Mary, just to illustrate what a teacher she was. We had a gathering at our retreat center in Asheville. And Mary was about maybe 12 years old by then. And she wasn't particularly verbal. She was verbal. She was hard to understand. She functioned at maybe, I don't know, second grade level or so. I'm not even sure. It didn't matter. But anyway, she was very social. She liked to interact with people a lot. And so we had this gathering of folks, and she's circulating amongst the crowd. I don't know, it was 40 or 50, 60 people. I don't know what it was. And I was in the kitchen doing some work, and the living room's next door, and there was this lady. She was a school teacher, an older woman, sitting on the couch. I had met her earlier. Sweet, sweet, sweet lady. And she was sitting kind of by herself. And I noticed that. And then I noticed Mary walk up to her and bend over, held her hands, and touched forehead to forehead with her. And I thought that was very unusual. I had never seen Mary do that before. And she held that pose for just a moment. And then Mary went on her merry way. and I looked over at this lady that was sitting on the couch, and she was crying. And I thought, oh my, I need to explore this. I want to know what happened. So I gave her a moment, and then I went over and sat with her and asked her, and she said, there's no words. There's no words. All I could see was light, and all I could feel was love. So that imparting that this master teacher daughter that we had was evident. And that woman's life was changed because of that. All I could see was light, and all I could feel was love. That's where the Course in Miracles takes us. When we get into the Course in Miracles, we find that that is the truth, that everything else is a story that we have made up and that we live out and we give reality to. Paul Solomon, over and over and over again, talked about live from your cause self. Live from your cause self. He said that in so many different ways. Live as a master, don't live as a victim. And that cause self, which is who we really are, has other names. It's the teacher, the inner teacher, the God self, the Holy Spirit within, the higher self. It's countless ways to describe it, and we each find our own unique way and our own unique path to experience and express that highest within us. And Paul chose to experience and express that with pure joy, needing no excuse. Can you imagine needing no excuse? I can imagine a million reasons to have excuses not to experience it, but to live with no excuse. Rabbi Gelberman was another one that was along that same line. Rabbi Gelberman would come in and he would sing, I am ready. I am ready. I am ready to love. I am ready. I am ready. I am ready to love. And then he would dance. I'm not going to dance for you. So saying yes to love becomes the only option, even when we stumble and fall and trip and make mistakes. We always can choose again and come back to saying yes to love. I made some mistakes this week. I made a few mistakes this week, but I'm not going to live in those mistakes. I'm going to say yes to love, and then let love take care of the mistakes. Let the Holy Spirit take care of those mistakes. And the Holy Spirit does that for me. Now, Course in Miracles can become very, very abstract. That's a lot of the reason that most of us put it down for a period of time and let the dust settle on it. And I'm not even going to go there, I don't think, into the abstract, because it's like, how do you define God? How do you define God? Well, you don't. You experience God. And we each have our own unique paths and our own unique way of perhaps experiencing the divine. But there is a current that flows through all of these teachings, including A Course in Miracles. There's an undercurrent that I have 3 minutes. Okay. Oh. It's a quick current, yes. Yeah, that current is sort of like what Poplin, is Poplin in here? No. What Poplin was saying the other day, he said, it's like riding a wave, it's surfing. And that current of love is present, and it's there available to us. We're already paddled out, we're already ready. And all we have to do is ride the wave and see where it takes us. And the only thing that's required of us to be able to do that is to drop our expectations, drop our beliefs, and let's just see what happens. That's what the Course teaches. Let's just see what happens. And then it becomes real. And it's not just another belief system. I get 5 more minutes? Oh, okay. Annalea's prompting me to tell you a story. But first, this thing about love and how all-encompassing it is and how it flows through all of us and how it's always available as an expression. There comes a time when we recognize that it's really the only choice that works. We can choose many other responses. And most of those responses, if we really pay attention, are probably coming from a place of fear. So what the Course teaches us is that's what is really always the choice. I'm always teaching. And what am I teaching? Am I teaching love or am I teaching fear? So it's really important to make sure we don't deceive ourselves or justify our responses when we're coming from a fear place, because by God, I'm right, or by God, I know. One of the biggest gifts I ever got from A Course in Miracles was studying with Tara Singh. When we first got into A Course in Miracles, he said to me one day, he said, Joshua, tell me something that's true. I'm thinking, well, the sky's blue, no. It wasn't about the world. He wanted to know something that was in my consciousness that I knew to be true. So I wrestled with that. And finally, I came up with something that was true. And what I came up with is what the Buddhists call beginner's mind. I said, Tara, I know something's true. And I said, I know that I don't know. And he said, oh, now you're ready. That constant filling up of story that we all do. And we get caught up in our story. We amend our story. We change our story. All of that's well and good. And that's part of living in this world. This world is a story. But there's another story to be told in A Course in Miracles and many other non-dual teachings, including the works of Paul, teach us that there's another way of looking at things. There's always another way of looking at things. And it doesn't necessarily involve using these eyeballs. It involves vision. 1 more minute. Rabbi Gelberman. Couple more minutes. I keep getting more. It's nice. So Rabbi Gelberman, I was very privileged. Paul would assign me to be like the secretary, chauffeur, tour guide for a lot of the teachers that came through the fellowship. So I was I might have been the only one with a car back then. I don't know. But but I was extremely fortunate to get hooked up with a number of great teachers and had a relationship with them. There was Brewjoy, Delete the Need to Understand. There was Sir George, The Truth Stands. Chris's rendition of Sir George yesterday was so good. That was so good. And then there was Rabbi Gelberman, who I took to the ARE, and we went to the upper chamber in the library there to meditate. And there's Rabbi Gelberman sitting beside me, and I'm over there, and I'm doing my 7 terraces, and my eyes are closed, and I decided to peek, see what he's doing. And he's got his eyes open, and he's looking out. He never turns his head, but he says to me, Joshua, sometimes you have to see beyond the horizon. Now, that's kind of an abstract thought right there, but that is speaking to what we call vision. And vision comes when there's space, when there's quiet, when the voice is apparent, whether it's a voice or an intuition or just a feeling. So I'll finish with that we approach this weekend. And if you ever decide to get back in the Course, read it spaciously. 1 sentence at a time is enough. You don't have to plow through that thing. And let it, see if it speaks to you. That's all. And if it speaks, it speaks. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So as we approach this weekend, I invite everyone to approach it with a sense of spaciousness and let the teachers that are coming speak to us in a place of spaciousness so we have room to receive it. Okay.